Welcome to the Metamorphosis podcast, hosted by Aaron Howe in the United States and myself, Nora Breuker in Germany. In this podcast, we talk to people about transformation and the moments and events that change us. We hope you enjoy. Thank you for joining us for our next episode of the Metamorphosis podcast. Before we start, I would like to give you a quick disclaimer. In this episode, we're diving into the topic of mental health issues. It contains mentions of suicidal thoughts and self-harm. If this content is a trigger for you, please be considerate of your own mental health. In this episode, I'm talking to Jay Collins. Jay is a 20-year-old auxiliary nurse from Sunderland, England. Jay described his young self in school as a normal, cringy kid that grew up in a tight family. When he turned 13 years old, his childhood and life drastically changed though. As unfortunately many children in high school experience, Jay became the victim of severe bullying. What followed were months of psychological tormenting and physical beatings. What was supposed to be a time to grow into yourself, make good and bad life experiences, and find your true self turned into a constant mind-numbing harassment for Jay. It eventually got so bad that he and his family had to arrange a supervised school attendance. In order to not fall into the hands of his tormentor, he received so-called absent cards and was allowed to leave class earlier in order to get safely and under supervision to the next one. He was also brought to and from school under guidance and was supposed to be never left alone. Needless to say that experiencing your high school time in this way does not go over without leaving scars. Even though his family and school did everything possible to support Jay, including expelling the responsible person and legal actions, Jay developed severe anxiety and depression. He stopped eating, was constantly ill, and could not sleep without medication. His mental health took a turn for the worse. With constant counseling for over a year, Jay was able to resume a somewhat normal life. Still, his struggle with depression and the remnants of years of torment never went away completely. Today, Jay's talking to us about his struggles over the years, what helped him the most through some really dark times, and how he made it his mission to help others who are struggling with mental health and bring more awareness to the issue. Tell us about your journey with mental health struggles. What does your life look like at the moment?
It's been sort of a constant journey, and in some sense I'm still going through it. So when it all kicked off, I was diagnosed with chronic depression, and at 2 points I did try and commit suicide. I was self-harming quite a lot, and with all the sort of drugs and the counselling and that, I sort of just that kept us sort of going and alive for a few years, and then I managed to get a decent sort of group of friends to sort of hang around with and help, and then it's all just sort of been working on myself to try and get better. I think it sounds weird, but spite is a really good motivator. So I think I came to the point in like the final year of secondary, and I said, I don't want this to affect us anymore. I don't want these to have like any more control over my life. I just want to be free from all this. So instead of going to a college where everyone was going to go, everyone in the school, I said I don't want to. I want to go to a sixth form where no one else is going, and then I can get a sort of fresh new start. I'm not going to have to be around them too. I'm not going to see anyone I knew from secondary, and I can completely sort of start afresh and start again. So just before I started taking my GCSEs, I left my counselling because I felt like we'd talked about everything we needed to, and we came up with a plan that would work. Which did to a bit. I did have sort of a relapse and I went back in college, but from the plan that we made when I left there, I think it worked. I said, I'm not gonna self-harm. Why do I need to end my own life from all this? Like, I'm strong enough to do this. Like, I'm gonna prove to them like I'm better than they put me down for. I'm just gonna prove to them and everyone else that, you know, I can just be me and I don't have to let everything control it. I started my job, I think, when it's around that same time of that mentality at Rainton Arena, where I was just a glass collector, but because it was late shifts and it was night shift, I really wanted to do well, and so I'd do all the shifts and I'd stay as long as I needed to, and sort of with the insomnia, I feel like it worked because I wasn't sleeping anyway on a night, so I might as well turn that into something positive, and I just worked because now I'm getting paid to not sleep. So I constantly worked in that, and it sort of gave us some fulfillment of it, and it sort of made us feel a little bit more normal, that it wasn't just me not being able to sleep. I didn't have to think about anything from there. I had to think about my job, and then a bunch of really nice people who I worked with who, you know, I mean, to them, I remember them probably just think of me as the really young glass collector that started, but like to them, they just like were everything to us. And so it's sort of, I mean, I still work there now, but now I'm the events manager, so I've built myself up in the place. So of course the arena holds a lot of emotional value to me.
Jay has been diagnosed with chronic depression. This makes him one of 246 million people worldwide who have been diagnosed with some form of it. For Jay, the process of living with this disease is to move forward every single day and learn to adapt. He's aware that his condition will never fully go away, but it's more about finding ways to cope and be happy. A big part of that is actually paying it forward and supporting others who are struggling and bringing more awareness to mental health issues. Finding what works for each and everyone is equally as important as being diagnosed in the first place. After getting the initial help from professionals at the time of the severe bullying in school, Jay went back to counseling a few times over the years. However, over time, his experience of handling this disorder changed.
You know, as I went older and I grew older and going through college, I had a relapse where I had to go back to counselling for a bit, which worked to a certain extent, and I felt like it was good, and I left. I really struggled with A-levels just because of the pressure of sort of getting, not in the uni, but just getting the grades I wanted for the job I wanted and the sort of career I wanted to go in. And at this point it started developing that, yes, I do want to help others. I feel like I want to improve myself, and I feel like I can help a lot of others do this, because it hasn't been easy for me doing it on my own, and I feel like a lot of people have to do it on their own. I've had a nice little support group here and there, but sometimes you need someone who understands properly, and it's always awful, because as much as your friends and your parents say that, oh, I'm there for you, you don't want to burden them with anything. I don't want to like tell my mom or my dad like, oh, like, I'm feeling quite suicidal again today. Like that would kill them, and to me, I couldn't bring myself to do it. So to have at least someone who isn't, you know, a family or who probably is a really good friend, but just someone to turn to who would be sort of neutral in that whole I don't want to burden you, would be great. So I knew I somewhat wanted to go into counselling myself or into nursing and that. So I needed good grades, so I sort of fell down again. But the third time I went, at this time I was honest with my parents. I was like, look, I think I need to go again. And this was only, I think, last year. And then when I went, I sat down with the same woman who saw us the first time. And when me and her talked, I sort of just sat and I said, look, I don't mean to be rude. I know exactly what's wrong with me. There's no point of us talking about it. I know what's wrong with me and I know what I need to do. I'm just depressed and I'm, you know, mentally disturbed, so I need to just focus on that. And that's something we could talk about and you might be able to help with, but I know roughly what I should be doing and what I need to do. So the first time I went, it was great. It was like a God's gift. It really helped us. It moved us to the next step. But then as I moved to the next step, then it no longer becomes useful. To others, it might be, you know, someone could have counselling for years and go back and forth and it still works every time. But for me, it didn't, because now it's it's not the point that I need to go for. I didn't need to sit and let everything out and identify what was wrong. I knew what was wrong, I knew why I was upset, and I knew there was something I had to do to fix that. So to find it was what I do next.
One of the reasons why you decided to make it your mission to help others who are suffering from mental health diseases was the importance of having people around who are not necessarily your own family or friends, who understand what you're going through because they might have gone through the same. Next to your work at the arena, you are now on your way to becoming a nurse and dedicated your own career to help others. Tell us about this journey of finding your purpose and where you are right now.
So I never knew what I wanted to do, but I was doing a bit of everything to gain some skills or improve in some way, to the point where I went for a paramedic job, and I went, this might be good. I like driving and I like caring for people, and it's like sort of nursing itself. So I did that, got all the way to I think the last two, but the guy that got the job had a bit more experience. But because of that, I then found this apprenticeship scheme that I've just recently completed. So now I'm in the job that I'm like, yes, this is me, this is what I want to do, this is great, this can help massively and has so much potential and opportunities. I'm now going to develop in this. And so it's exciting that I'm just in the start of it, and I've passed my first grade, and so I'm excited for then the next steps onwards.
How much do you think our society has progressed over the time when it comes to handling and understanding mental health issues?
I feel it's still very niche because it was very young. It was sort of always the kids, always the teenagers, the young adults who, had all these conditions and that, and they'd start popping out of the woodworks. But you look at it and a lot of older people have it. You can get to the age of like 80, you could lose your wife or your husband, and you're now depressed because that person who's been with you for 60 years, 70 years of your life is now gone. You could be caring for someone like your mother or your father, and you could be getting depressed and anxious all the time because they're ill and you just want to look after them. So it affects all of us, and we're slowly starting to realise that. And it's not so much of we're putting down the kids, you're a bit upset, get over it. It's now like, you're upset, but this is serious, like, let's talk about it. It's getting younger and younger, but the range of the age that's affecting, it's just getting bigger. So I feel like there's a lot to do to normalise it and to treat it. More care going into it in hospital settings, in outreach clinics and sort of CAMs and counselling departments that itself of loads of people who are just focused on mental health and helping people just on that alone. Just like, you'd have a place where it was just to treat cancer, or another place just to treat ophthalmology, eyes, but now there's a place just to sort of treat mental health, and it's great, but there's still a lot more work to be done and acceptance around it all.
How do people react when you talk to them about your own struggles? Do you talk about it with your college friends or coworkers?
When it first kicked off, I sort of didn't understand it, and I didn't want to accept it, so I wasn't open. I was always sort of an open book with ripped out pages. There's still a lot I sort of don't want to go into, or there's just for how easy it is, or how easy I can make life, it's better not to go into as much specifics like names and times and specific dates and that, just because, if the boot fits, if someone ever watches or reads something I post, then if the boot fits, then like it's you're a part of it. But I'm not gonna, shut someone down or, point names and blame fingers. So it's easier to sort of keep a few things to myself, but now I've accepted it, and I've grown quite a lot, and I've moved on. It's a lot easier to talk about it. A lot of the times, especially when I sort of first meet people, I know it's a part of me, and I've accepted it is, but I don't want whoever I've met to know that. Like, it's never gonna be the first thing I talk about. There's still a few scars on my hand. I know there's a few nurses who've mentioned, oh, what, have you hurt yourself? Where have you got that from? And I've never said it. I've never wanted to tell them. It's something that I feel doesn't need to be said. If I'm ever having a lovely heart-to-heart with them, which a few of them I have, I might tell them some of the story, but there's also parts of me which don't need to go over. If it's ever a sort of talk like this, then by all means, then yes, I'll talk about almost everything, apart from name specifics. But through a day-to-day life aspect, I try and not let it still be a part of us. But I will happily sort of tell my experiences with it, but it's never the forefront.
Do you feel like people are treating you differently when you do tell them your story, and maybe even mention that there have been times when you were suicidal?
I feel like they're a lot more wary, and understandably, a lot of people don't know how to deal with it. They sometimes don't want to hear that sort of stuff. They can't stomach it, and it's I've always hated the idea that I'm just doing it for like attention or sympathy. So that's mainly why I don't do it a lot, because if you tell someone and they go, oh, you don't seem like anything like that, Jay, you're so bubbly and energetic and like happy all the time. And it's like, well, that's great, because that's what I want to be and that's what I portray to you. But there's times I go home after a long day at work and I just break down and I'm in tears. Like, if my day is off, I'm just miserable and depressed. Like, it's how it comes. It'll come in roller coasters. Some days I'll feel absolutely on top of the world, and some, I feel like I'm back in that mental state. So it's always going to be a constant battle in a roller coaster, but it's what I've accepted as what happens. So you don't really need to know that, and I don't want any sympathy or any additional attention from that. It doesn't need to be given the attention. I mean, loads of other people who aren't as sort of accepting and overcome it as me might need, by all means, that attention if they first start telling it. But for me, who's somewhat trying to move on from it or has accepted it, I don't need that sort of constant surveillance on us. So it's why I sort of don't. A lot of the times, like my lads, when we were in Magaluf and I started having a mental health relapse, was when the last time I ever self-harmed. I think it was only 2 years ago. I've still got a massive scar all the way down my arm. I had a bandage around it. We're on a lad's holiday, and I just had a lovely heart-to-heart to them by the pool. So it's nice having then someone who does react in that sort of way, and they're very like hesitant and squeamish about it because they don't really understand it and they can't stomach it, but at the same time they're very supportive in their view at the same time. And some of the times they'll be like, oh well, I've had similar experiences, or I've felt in similar ways, and then it's just sort of good to be open, because it does make us closer. It does show you that, oh, you know what, we're not that too different. You might like this and I might like this, and we're mates, but the pair of us have had that sort of mental experience separately, but it's still together.
Do you think if all of us, our entire society, would put less of a stigma on mental health and would treat it more normal, would it make a big difference?
100%, because if you go into a hospital with a broken leg or a broken shoulder or a cut, people on the front door, let's treat it, let's fix it, this isn't your fault, you've had a fall, you've been knocked into whatever, because they can see it. But with the mental health, if you do all the scans and the brain scans, you can see that it does change, the chemical biology of yourself inside. My stomach has shrunk, so it's not as large as it probably should be, and so biologically, physically, it's still there, but you can't see that. Mentally, different parts of the brain will be deactive, will be active, there'll be a different brain shape to a normal one, so you can't, it's physical, and it's there, so you can't all just say, oh, it's just all in your head, you're just thinking about it, because it's physically altered your body, but of course you can't then physically see it, because no one can see a brain, no one can see a stomach, so everyone sort of dismisses it more. So if everyone sort of treat it like any other illness or accident, like a broken shoulder or a cut on the arm, then it would be a lot more acceptable, and it would be treated proper and accordingly.
For Jay, normalizing mental health struggles already begins in school. If children, teenagers, and young adults would already be taught about the different disorders, it might not just help educate people in a young age, but also help those who might already be suffering from it in school. Jay's struggles began when he was only a child, and he is certainly not alone. He believes that if we would all learn about mental health issues like we do about other diseases or biological material, the stigma that is surrounding people suffering from it would lessen significantly. For Jay, there's still a lot of stereotypes and difficulties when it comes to understanding mental health issues.
It's hard to diagnose it, and it's hard to know which one it is. There's a lot of variations, there's a lot of differences. You know, someone could just be really sad for one day, and everyone would be like, oh, you're depressed, but you know, people get sad, it happens. And then someone could feel really sad and depressed for weeks, and everyone's just like, oh yeah, that's nothing. So it's hard to sort of diagnose it, it's hard to know what it is, because there's always a load of comorbidities, especially with, you know, other sort of more well-known diseases, you know, Alzheimer's and dementia and depression, and that all of them sort of link and share the same symptoms and signs. So it's very hard to be like, oh, well, he's got depression, when really he's actually on the early signs of dementia, or he's just a bit, you know, forgetful, he's got Alzheimer's, when really he's depressed and he's suffering from a lot of other mental health disorders. You know, you've got eating disorders, which you can eat too much, but everyone thinks it's always like, oh, you just don't eat at all. But, you know, there's always sort of two sides of the spectrum, and there's a lot of variation and deviation. So there's always a middle gap, and there's always a slight variation. So it is hard to sort of understand and discover, but it's there.
Jay has always used creativity as an outlet. From photography over acting to videography, Jay has done it all. So when his workplace, the Sunderland NHS Foundation, asked people to participate in a project to create new posters who feature specific health issues, Jay knew that mental health needed to be featured, and he had just the right ideas to share. Fortunately, the hospital was immediately on board, and even today, it is still showcasing Jay's photography, highlighting mental health issues on its walls. Still, Jay wanted more awareness for the struggles he himself went through, which is how he came up with his own project, a documentary about his own journey towards more mental and physical health, featuring the life stories of people around the world who are sharing their mental health struggles. The big finale of the documentary? Nothing less than a big boxing match in the arena that Jay has been working for since school, with Jay as a contestant.
And so I started watching quite a bit of boxing, and that's been the only sport I seem to have ever enjoyed watching on the TV.
And that is someone from England, oh my god, no football?
I find no enjoyment in watching football on TV. I like doing the sports, I absolutely hate watching them, but boxing for some reason I seem to really enjoy. And so I started talking to it with my mates from college, and they were all just like rinsing us and being like, oh Jay, you know, you'd never do something like that, what do you know about boxing, like have you seen yourself? And that just infuriated me. So in anger and spite again, I signed up for my first ever boxing match to then be at the end of the year. And so I contacted the hospital and that about a few of the charities and stuff, and then we came up with this big thing which was meant to be 2020, but COVID's butchered it a bit. But it was going to be a little documentary about my journey from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and it was improving my physical health, my mental health. It was going to be going out, meeting new people, getting their stories, their experiences as part of like an interview style. It then was going to be them, people who I meet, showing me something that I've never done before, get me out of my comfort zone. So there was a girl who's never been skydiving before, always wanted to do it but been too scared, so me and her had organised a skydive together. There's a few people who's doing their own charity events for their own health or their own reasons. I was going to either join in with them or film it for them. Colour runs, mud runs, 5Ks, 10Ks, the Great North Run, dressed as Captain America for Mind Mental Health, and St Benedict's Children's Hospice, which is the hospital's charities. It's going to go around the children's ward dressed as Captain America and try and cheer up some of the kids. So it was going to be this sort of big documentary, which then ends with the boxing match on November 28th. But it was going to be this great thing, and we're still wanting to do it. Of course, it got put on hold for the first 3 months, from March to, of course, now in sort of June, July time. But we've slowly started coming back up. I was down south Somerset the other week filming some stuff with some clients, and last weekend I was in Liverpool filming a girl who had body dysmorphia. She was 17 stone. She's lost it all now, and she's doing her first 10k run with all of the weight she's lost on her back. And she's in the finalists for Miss Liverpool, and she's trying to become Miss England, and she's going to share her stories of battling physical and the mental health of it all. So try and hear all that and be able to be like, I'm going through this, you're going through that, but we're still doing similar things to better ourselves. And it's all about sort of accepting then who we are, because she said she went from super fat to super skinny, and she's happy being in the medium. So it was absolutely fascinating listening to her about all that, and it's great having that as part of the project as well. And it's great to then be able to have a platform for myself where she can share that story.
From meeting all of these people and hearing their stories, exchanging experiences that you've all made, what is the lesson you learned for yourself?
I think the one thing I took home is we're all, in a sense, no matter how big or small, affected, and just to share it and be comfortable with it and accept it is half, if not most, of the battle when trying to overcome it. With the whole positive attitude and trying to shut down as many sort of negative barriers as we can, everything just becomes easy, the weight's off your shoulders, and it's just everyone's together, and we all know what each other is on about. We might not sort of understand what it's like to go through what they do, or what it's like sort of having their disorder or illness, but how you felt and how they must feel.
What does the life of Jay look like in the next couple of years?
Ideally in my career, I'd want to be in the next, I'd hope to be a qualified registered nurse, so either a band 5 or a band 6. Ideally my end goal plan is to probably be a nurse practitioner for the mental health ward, or at least a ward manager for a mental health ward, be able to work in them environments and that, develop myself a lot more in the career, and work all over the hospital to just build my skills as a person, as a nurse. With this documentary, it's going to be not just all of 2020 now, it's going to be 2020 and 2021. So I want to make this greater than I envisioned for just this year. I want to go better, see a lot more people, travel a lot more. The boxing fight, I definitely want it to happen end of next year, I think it is. And it's kind of great because with the whole COVID thing, the arena staff, we're all 0 hours, bar a few of them who's gone to a supermarket or will go into a different job. So it's great that it's awful we're not all going to work together in the arena, but we now are all free, so then when we do have the fight and I go to the arena that I've worked at the past 6 years, into having my first boxing fight, that I've got everyone there who I want, and none of us have to really worry about holidays. And so just to end this journey, this project off with that would be immense.
Is there something you would like to tell people on how they should react or what they should do when someone confides in them about their mental health struggles?
Yeah, because there's always people everywhere. And like I said earlier with the arena, some of the people who I worked with on my first years will probably think of me as just, oh yeah, I remember that kid. He was the glass collector, he just started, when I was leaving. They've been there for years, they've made their own friends, but to me it was like, you were the first person who was there, you told me all these basics. Like, to me, you hold a lot more place in like my heart and in my life than I do to you, which is fine. But I might do that to someone. There might be someone who I've met and I've only shared like a couple of conversations with them, but to them, I was then the only person who spoke to them in a week, and I was nice and pleasant to them. So I hold that to them, I hold a lot more place in their heart than they did to me. To me, it was just a normal person who I passed by in the town. To them, it was this wonderful stranger who kept us going for another week. So if that was a friend, and it was to me just a normal classmate, but to that classmate, like I was, top dog, he'd come to me and want help, and to me it'd be weird, like, not weird, but it'd be like, oh, he's popped up and asked me for help, but I wouldn't assume that me and him are the closest people to each other. I thought he'd, want to go to one of his close mates, but to him, I'm the only person at that moment he thinks can help him. So you've just got to sort of not barter it off as, well, no, go to someone else. Why? You've just got to sort of think, in a really nice way, this is very sweet. Like, I'm the only person this person needs at this moment, or I'm the person who they think can help the best. And so you've just got to literally, some of the time it's not do something for me, it's just listen to me. So all you need to do is listen, sort of advise at any point where you can, and just talk. Because a lot of the time, I do this a lot, I talk to myself a lot, and some of the times I will talk to someone about everything I've been talking to myself about, just to sort of get a bit of clarity on what I've been saying back to myself. So if I'm thinking, oh, should I do that or should I do this, and I've been weighing up the pros and cons, if I talk to someone physically who's different, and they go, oh, well, yeah, but that's a pro and that's a con, you go, actually, yeah, you've got a point, I'll do it that way, or I'll do it another way. So you just need that sort of second validation, or you need that actual other voice to tell you instead of just you to yourself. So you've just got to just spend a little bit of time, and it doesn't take long, and it's not going to be like you're going to be lumbered with them forever. It's just you're going to have 10 minutes, and that's going to keep them going for however long.
That is so important, and it's something that not a lot of us are actually very conscious about. We never really know who we might influence, or what a person is going through, struggling with when we meet them. And so I think it's a very good reminder to all of us to be more conscious about who we meet and what we say to them and how we treat them. And so I think this is a really wonderful statement to end this episode. And so I just want to say thank you, Jay, for being so open and sharing something that is really, really personal to you. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing your story and hearing how you overcame difficult times, and also being completely honest that you're still struggling with mental health issues and that this might be part of your life forever, but that there's always hope and ways to cope and be happy and finding your own true passion, basically. So thank you so, so much, Jay. It's been wonderful.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure and a blast.
The best way to challenge our own stereotypes about mental health and to actually learn more about the diseases is to have first-hand contact with someone who is suffering from it. We are incredibly lucky that Jay Collins chose to share his life story and his struggles with us. On this journey, we've learned of the many challenges that mental health patients are actually facing. It is important that we are all much more open-minded to what is going on around us and who we might actually have an impact on. Just a conversation can change someone's life. If you do feel like you might be suffering from a mental health condition or have suicidal thoughts, please seek help. Confide in someone. Talk to your family, friends, peers, or colleagues. If you think you can't do that, reach out to your general practitioner or another professional. In our show notes, we're not only giving you more information about Jay, but are also including a link to find emergency contacts all around the globe. The Metamorphosis podcast is produced by Aaron Howe in the United States and me, Nora Breuker, in Germany. Thank you to all of our supporters, and of course a huge thank you to our guests who are telling us their stories from around the globe about change and life-changing moments. For more information about each episode, check out officialmetamorphosispodcast.com and follow us on Instagram at officialmetamorphosispodcast for an exclusive look behind the scenes and our guests. We're happy for you to leave your thoughts on each episode, and we're very much looking forward to hearing from you. This is the Metamorphosis Podcast with Aaron and Nora.